Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at talking heads over the past week. The sewage leak in Peel, bed blocking in hospital and the state of the island's roads were all up for discussion. But first, one of the biggest news stories of the week. Over to Stu Peters.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
There's a story in this morning's Times newspaper. Staff at a care home in Harrogate in Yorkshire are being criticised by the government's care watchdog for referring to residents as love and darling and Chuck and Petal, probably. Although the care workers think that these endearments help to put their guests at ease, the Care Quality Commission judged Brackenley Residential Care Home as requiring improvement, highlighting the overly friendly and affectionate way that some staff responded to people as a reason for the grading. According to the inspectors, this kind of terminology was patronising and demeaning to the residents. Stephanie Kirkham-Meikle, the chief executive of Harrogate Skills for Living, which runs Brackenley, said that being addressed this way, especially for those with learning difficulties, is a comfort to them and important if they have no other family. But what do you think about it? Do you agree with Stephanie that terms like sweetie, darling and love help those being cared for feel more at home? Or do you agree with the inspectors and feel that these kinds of names are derogatory or inappropriate? On the face of it, I think that it's nice to be nice and to use caring words like that with people. But I can understand that some people might think it's over-personal, maybe, and a lot of people, especially older people, do like a little bit of formality at times. So I can understand that maybe they would feel awkward about it. But what's this, Stu, talking about over-friendliness in care homes? The clue is in the name, care home. Because the care, by the way, why are you playing the oldest singer of them all, Cliff? It turned into Wrinkly Radio. Cheers from Grumpy Steve. Well, no, it came up. I didn't choose it. It came up on my playlist today. I was surprised to see it, actually. Cliff Richard, he must have had a tax bill or something like that. Talking about over-familiar terms, most of the people are old, ill, scared. How can it be wrong to be friendly and caring instead of clinical and detached in their last years? The people, not numbers, says Liz. Yeah, on the face of it, Liz, I fully agree with you there. But I do know that some older people do prefer a bit of formality. You say to somebody, what's your first name? And she'll say Mrs. I mean, that's happened to me a number of times. So that's somebody that, doesn't want that kind of friendly and caring and personal service. And I would suggest that there are probably quite a few people like that. But I would have thought that familiar terms would be a lot nicer. Hi, Stu. Young people often display bad manners and or lack of respect, often saying things like, there you go, when serving you, says David H. I think that proves the point. David H. prefers things to be a little bit more formal.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
The government has revealed a raft of cuts to the Job Seekers Allowance, JSA. Agreed by Tynwald back in June, Treasury claimed the changes would encourage more people back into employment. Director of Social Security at Isle of Man Treasury, Ross Stevens, told Chris Cave what differences will be seen in the future.
The rule changes, when they're coming in the 1st of November, will apply to everybody. There's no sort of grandfathered rights. It's much more equitable that way. Anybody who's presently earning at the moment, as I say, we disregard. You can earn as much as you like. We disregard the first £30 and then the remainder is taken off the income-based job seekers benefit payment. What we were doing is taking that disregard down to £10 because we felt that we discovered in our review of how it was going that the JSA, base JSA plus £30, people were actually earning more than a person who was working 42 hours a week on the minimum wage.
Does this not discourage people who are in part-time work or earning £30? They'll think part-time job isn't worth it, so they'll be solely collecting JSA.
The expectation, anyone with a family or a lone parent, if they go over 16 hours a week in a part-time job, then there's another benefit which recognises the effort that you're putting in called Employed Persons Allowance that provides the support there. And a single person, really should be looking to work full-time with no reason for not working full-time. And I think, as Mr. Henderson pointed out, we've got about 160 long-term unemployed, and just last week at the job centre there were nearly 200 jobs on the island at the minimum wage that required no qualifications, and it seems it seemed odd to him that disparity should exist. And the question there, what is stopping these people from taking the jobs that are available?
Well, that brings us fittingly onto my next point, really. In your figures, you say, I think there were 450 vacancies at the end of the month, but 790 registered as unemployed. That shows there aren't enough jobs to go round. Does it not suggest there should be more focus on creating jobs rather than punishing the unemployed further?
Punishing is a strong word. The money that we give to the unemployed is the amount that's required, and as has been stated before, it's at a significantly higher level than in adjacent jurisdictions. And even with this reduction, you will be down at or around that level, rather than having money taken away. There will still be support for you, both financially and a huge amount of support from my colleagues in the job centre.
And do you agree with Mr. Henderson that employment has more advantages than just a pay packet?
Yes, I mean, everybody is better off in work psychologically, but obviously when people are making the decision to go into work, particularly if they found themselves in unemployment for a long period of time, it's difficult to motivate yourself. And if at the end of it you're not getting any more than you would have got if you'd sat at home or maybe done a small amount of job and drawn that £30 disregard, then it's difficult to motivate the people into that position. And this is part of a process designed to help encourage those hard choices. And I'm not saying it's not easy for the people there. It's going to be difficult for somebody who's unemployed, particularly for a length of time, to get a job. And we're here not just with, as you're suggesting, the stick, chasing them with reducing money, but we have got a vast array of support that has always been there.
Director of Social Security at Isle of Man Treasury, Ross Stevens, talking to Chris Cave. But this hasn't been an entirely popular decision, as Bernard Moffat from the Celtic League has already criticised the cuts, calling them a mean and miserable move.
If you make it difficult for people who are unemployed to get by, it becomes more difficult for them to seek work, and it also demoralises them. And I was very interested already to read a comment from a person who's obviously trying very hard to obtain employment online and has literally applied for all manner of jobs, saying that this is likely to push him over the edge. You know, he's managing to exist at the moment, but this will be the final straw.
Bernard Moffat from the Celtic League. Simon sent me a message via Facebook earlier on. Did all of Tynwald give Minister Teare a mandate to give the jobless a good kicking? Yes, I think it was approved by Tynwald. And why should MLCs, without a public mandate, be permitted to gang up on the unemployed? I assume that you're talking about Bill Henderson, who was an MHK until fairly recently with a fairly big share of the vote in North Douglas, MLC now, but a member of the department. So, you know, I mean, that's the way it is. Those are the rules, I think. So I don't see anything unusual about either of those things. It's about time too. Lazy people just don't want to work. It's about time. The system needs to change, says G. Well, all right. I think that a lot of people would probably agree with you on that, G, in that everybody seems to know somebody who chooses not to work and live on benefits. I would suspect, and I don't know, I've not got any figures for this, but there are an awful lot of things like this that we're all sort of up in arms about, people taking liberties with the system, be it immigration or whatever, unemployment. And when you actually look at the figures, it's a tiny, tiny percentage of the problem. And the problem is usually caused by greedy bankers and financiers and people on huge incomes not paying their full amount of income tax and using tax evasion systems and things like that. I mean, I'm reading about one of those at the moment. So, I mean, the actual amount of money that the few people who might choose to stay unemployed are costing the state is a tiny percentage of those other things. But, yeah, sure. I mean, if the rest of us have got to work, then everybody should work. It shouldn't be a choice. Well, I'll not bother going to work. I'll live on benefits instead. That shouldn't be a choice, should it? Stu, it's a very unfair system. A small few who prefer to live off the state means that everybody has to be treated the same way. Maybe the government should employ these long-term unemployed themselves. And if it doesn't work out, they'd not be entitled to any job seekers' money at all. I know people who'd love a job, but because they have small disabilities, they're overlooked by employers, but still have to have their JSA reduced along with everyone else. They say they can earn £30 to top it up, but these people still have to find someone who will employ them. Roll on the next election. And that from Debbie.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Health Minister Howard Quayle has outlined new laws that would give his department more power to tackle what is allegedly a growing problem. The National Health and Care Service Bill is also hoped to streamline the way the Department of Health and Social Care runs by laying a framework to easily introduce future services. It's currently out for public consultation. Mr Quayle told Jason Roberts more about the legislation.
Well, one of the things that stands out in it is talk of taking legal action against people to force them to leave hospital. Just tell us a little bit about why that's an issue.
Well, I always remember in my first month visiting one of the wards, and I came across a patient who had been in our ward for over a year. And they were known as what's known as a bed blocker. There was absolutely nothing up with them whatsoever, but they were refusing, and their family were refusing to move them out of Nobles Hospital. Now, as a result of that ward had been one bed short for a year, and if people were waiting for an operation and we had a sudden emergency accident, then we were having to cancel an operation because this individual was in a bed when they just didn't need to be. And at the time, we didn't have any legal powers to force them to leave Nobles Hospital. So they were effectively costing the taxpayer £250 a day and blocking important operations from going ahead.
Well, let me ask you as Minister, I mean, people will hear that and perhaps worry a little bit, but can you tell us now that if somebody is in hospital and they honestly don't have anywhere to go, you're not just going to be throwing them out onto the street in that case?
No, we're not going to be throwing them out onto the street. I mean to say, there's now that we have merged the two departments, we're the Department of Health and Social Care, and Social Care always liaise with the health professionals to discuss the move from hospital. Once someone has been signed off as being fit to leave the hospital, then there's a discussion about where we're going to put them, where they choose to go into a nursing home or relevant facility for their condition. So no, this isn't a case of just getting people out of hospital. This is the very rare instances where people are refusing to leave hospital to avoid paying their social care costs.
Health Minister Howard Quayle talking to Jason Roberts. I didn't even know that was a problem, to be honest. You learn something new every day. If someone could bed block for a year, why are elderly people with their own houses who have to go into hospital or care homes liable to lose that house to pay for the care? When were all the householders on the Isle of Man informed about this game-changing law? We weren't. Get Mr Quayle back on to explain. In a Q&A, please. Regards from Chris, who's a house owner. Kevin's been on from the Joey Dunlop Foundation. He says, Stu, last winter Joey's charity was able to provide accommodation for people between hospital and home. With the summer season coming to an end, we'd be more than happy to provide accommodation to people who need our specialised facilities before being fit enough to return home. If any of your listeners would like to discuss, then ask them to contact me on 677 7741. Is that 67? 67741. So 677 741. Asked to speak to Kevin about that. And I think we've got a caller on. I'm not quite sure who it is. Let's go to the lines. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, who's calling?
Steve.
Steve. Hello, Steve.
My wife has just come out of hospital. Came out on Saturday. She's been in for 5 weeks after the fall.
Oh, right.
She's elderly, 82, and there was nothing broken. And I think after a couple of weeks, she could very well have been moved out of that acute ward.
Right.
But in their wisdom, Nobles have shut down Newlands, where you could recuperate. And I was made very aware that my wife is holding up a bed on an acute ward.
Right.
But
there was no real alternative.
Now a total of 5 weeks, probably 3 of them quite unnecessarily.
Yes.
But I mean, if you close down the rehabilitation ward, then what are you going to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
What has happened is she's come home, I'm nursing her at home, and I've got to get carers in.
Yeah.
And, get on with it, Steve, seems to be the attitude.
Oh, really? Oh, that's less than helpful, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. The other thing is, people have talked about going into a care home. The last thing I would do is put my wife in a care home.
Yes.
But when you go in, you have to, if you've got any savings at all, you have to pay the full cost.
Yes.
I think the best thing I could have done was gone on a world cruise and blown it all up, and then I would have got it free.
Well, I think that people say that it's actually cheaper to do that.
In my experience, are national health patients who are getting it absolutely free. But
no, there are some strange things.
I mean, I never jibbed when I was asked, or my wife, we both worked all our life, paid our national health.
Yeah.
And at the end, you think you're insured for this sort of thing. I mean, if I had a fire in the house, I would expect the insurance company to pay up.
Of course.
And that's what I would expect the NHS to do. But there we are.
All right, some very good points there. Thanks for calling today, Stephen.
Okay.
Cheers, bye-bye. Some very good points there, and I think a lot of people feel like that about it as well.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Big talking point this week has been the news of a sewage leak in Peel caused by a cracked sewage outfall pipe. There have been concerns raised over the quality of the bathing water. This is what Manx Utilities Authority Chairman Alf Cannon had to say to Jason Roberts about the matter.
We're very conscious of the need to complete the regional sewage treatment plans that have been taking place, plants that have been taking place around the island. Clearly, there is added pressure now, I think, on getting Peel complete. We're currently carrying out a full evaluation of the options. We have spoken to Peel commissioners on this issue. We've tried to do our best to get clarity, and I'm very, very much hoping that we'll have full clarity on this issue before the end of the year.
I mean, it's obviously causing some concern among residents of Peel because it is pretty close to the beach, that pipeline. I mean, it's not far away from bathers at all, really.
We have been in touch with Peel commissioners. We have looked at all the test results that have been coming through from the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture. At the moment, there is nothing that has been presented to us which has caused us any great alarm, or that is evidence there has been anything more than the usual levels of the usual water clearance clarity levels. So we are in constant touch with the Department of Food and Environment, Food and Agriculture. We're in constant touch with the commissioners. If there was a change in the situation where bathing became dangerous, then we would obviously have a much greater level of concern, and we would be communicating that to the commissioners and clearly to the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture as well.
That's Chairman of the Manx Utilities Authority, Alf Cannon, speaking to Jason Roberts. Well, I'm joined in the studio today by John Griffiths from the Isle of Man Friends of the Earth. So, John, welcome to the programme. Thanks for coming in today. Now, I believe that you were the one who first reported this problem. How did you notice it?
That's correct, Stu. I took a walk down the groin because I noticed that the water was a little bit discoloured on one side of it, and as I got towards the point where the leak is, it was noticeable that the water was extremely discoloured. The state of the tide meant that whatever was leaking out was getting trapped in the corner at the side of the groin. This is not 100 metres, it's 10 metres from the edge of the beach.
Right.
So I went straight up to Harbour Control, mistakenly thinking that Manx Infrastructure were responsible.
Yeah.
Anyways, I used the phone on the door there to phone Douglas Harbour Control. They then said they would get somebody to look at it. So I thought that's sorted. There weren't too many people on the beach at the time, but the following day when I went back down, there were a lot of people on the beach. Right in the corner there was 4 or 5 children with an adult. I'm talking children 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
Paddling round, and when I went down I could see the stuff bubbling up again. So I went back to Harbour Control, took the operator there, the Harbour Control guy, took him down and pointed it out to him. And again, after that, then we then contacted the press and publicised the problem. But for Mr. Cannon to say that people aren't at risk, if you'd have seen the state of the water...
Well, this is raw sewage, I believe.
I was mortified.
Yeah.
The first thing I did when I seen it, these children were playing around. So I grabbed hold of the adult that was with them and suggested he took the children out of the water and go at least 100 metres down the beach.
Yeah.
If not even go in the water at all, really.
Well, I was quite interested in listening to what Alf Cannon was saying there, because he was at pains to say that that things aren't necessarily any worse than they normally are, which doesn't fill me with a lot of admiration for the quality of the bathing water in Peel, which is, I mean, it's just a perfect bay there, isn't it? In Peel?
It is.
It's a proper bucket and spade beach.
Yeah.
But not if we've got raw sewage. Do you think that maybe? I mean, it seems to me that the MUA is being very slow in rectifying this. They say that they can't get divers until next week or whatever to do the job. Is it maybe because we're at the end of the season now and therefore it's not quite such a threat to tourism?
I don't think it's any excuse to say it should have been dealt with promptly. The tide at the moment, as the tides have gotten bigger this week, you can actually walk to the point where the sewage is leaching out.
Yeah.
You don't have to put divers down. They'd look silly on the beach with their wetsuits on.
Well, yeah, I suppose so.
Mind you, saying that, they probably have to have some sort of protection
from what's coming out the pipe.
Yeah, the health risks from what's in the pipes.
Yeah. It really doesn't sound good enough, does it? And it doesn't seem as though it's a top priority. And on the line, we've got our friend Neil from Castletown, who's got a point of view on this. Hello, Neil.
Good afternoon, Stuart, and good afternoon to your guest, Mr. Griffiths. I've actually done some water analysis through the course of my job.
Oh, right.
And the water quality in Peel has never, ever been really good, to be honest.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
The coliform, i.e. the bacteria level, has always been very, very high.
Yeah. OK, well, thank you for your call, Neil. And it is interesting. I thought, listening to Alf Cannon talking about the water quality, I mean, it was almost damned by faint praise from what he was saying. Oh, well, yeah, the water quality isn't any worse than it normally is, sort of thing.
Well, to be fair, I mean, the coliform level on the south and the southeastern coast of the island is actually very, very much improved. I mean, anybody could go swimming anywhere down here, and it's really pristine, to be honest.
Oh, good.
The only problem now is that Bill Dale's team are out regularly moving detritus and flotsam, which tends to get swept in.
Yeah.
But the bacterial level is certainly well down, and I think Peel should have been certainly allocated a slot within the IRS scheme. That's my personal view anyway.
All right, good to hear from you, Neil. Thank you very much for calling. Let's go to line one. We've got Dave on from Ballasalla. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Stuart.
Yeah.
Stuart, you know what the cry's going to be?
No money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that I think John will probably agree with me. Unless you do the job properly, you're just moving it further along the line.
Sure, yeah.
You've got to deal with the problem and deal with the problem as it is.
Yeah.
As Neil said, we had a problem down here way back in the 80s when I was on commissioners, and we had a very, very similar problem then. And unless they address the situation in such a way that the outfalls or the treatment plants are going to be properly watched, you're never, ever going to get rid of the problem.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's got to be that there's got to be proper treatment, and at the end of it all, as Neil said, you're going to get the solids and such like building up. They've got to go somewhere.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much indeed, Dave. Let's have a look at some texts and things. This came in yesterday, actually, from Ken. He said, lack of divers. There are plenty of commercial divers on the gas platform off Douglas. You would have thought that our government would be able to think outside the box and ask them for help. I don't know about that. If the people of Peel hadn't moaned and dragged their feet so much years ago, this problem wouldn't exist, as they'd already have a treatment works. The Manx Utility want to send them the bill, says Alan. Not quite sure about that. How can the seawater be safe if there's sewage floating in it? People's health shouldn't be put at risk. Money and cost shouldn't even come into it. If the pipe's broken, fix it. If you had sewage seeping out of a manhole on your property, you'd be made to fix it. It's a health risk. What's the difference? Says Ian. That's a very good point, isn't it?
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Which of the island's roads do you think are most in need of maintenance? The Department of Infrastructure is conducting what it calls a detailed survey of the island's highways so it can prioritise its road maintenance programme. Specialist vehicles have been scanning the roads to get technical data about the road itself. Network operations engineer Bill Corlett told Emmy Griffiths more about it.
We're looking at what most people would call the main roads. What we'd classified, we've got a hierarchy of roads. We've got the strategic roads, which is the main road between Douglas and Peel, or the main road between Douglas and Castletown and on through to Port Eyre, and the mountain road, the main road all the way through from Ramsey to Castletown. They're all the strategic routes, and they're our highest class roads. And so we would look to them first to carry out the major maintenance on them. And then we would start looking at the second-class roads to see what needed doing with those, and then on down to the third-class roads.
When you go about prioritising, do you take into account factors like popular commuting routes and different diversions and that kind of aspect?
Yeah, well, it is. Like I said, most of the strategic network is which takes most of the traffic. So those are the commuting routes, and that's where we would concentrate. But I mean, if these surveys throw up that the foundations of those roads are okay, then we don't need to spend major monies on those, but it may be that we need to consider surface dressing some of them, or even resurfacing some of them, just to keep them in good condition rather than letting them deteriorate too much.
So you've already started this survey, but once that's completed, how long are you thinking it's going to take to actually get our roads back up to standard?
The roads are already in a pretty good standard. We're already aware of where the worst bits are. And these surveys gives us a sort of a more objective look at the roads, and it throws up things that we hadn't noticed maybe. Like, for instance, if you think about the road going through Foxdale, that's in a pretty poor state. Now, the machines going through there, none of them are going to give us any surprises on that road, but it may be that there'll be other bits of road out there, the length of road, which do throw up some surprises for us. It may show that the foundations are starting to go, and we hadn't noticed yet.
So we've already seen quite a lot of roadworks taking place over the last few weeks. I mean, at the moment, between Quarterbridge and Braddon Bridge is closed in the evenings. You've got the road outside QE2 High School has just had a lot of work done. Ramsey's got a lot of roadworks. Are these all part of this maintenance plan?
They are, and it's an ongoing maintenance plan. It's a sort of plan that will never be finished. We'll never stop working on the roads. It just won't happen, because the roads of people who are using the roads will need maintenance on them. And so what we're doing with these surveys is this is giving us a chance to look for the plans for 2 years to 10 years ahead. We've already got our plans in place largely for the next couple of years.
It's no secret that the DOI has been making a lot of cuts recently, and how necessary is it to spend this money on road maintenance?
It's very necessary. We've got the road network is probably the biggest asset that the government owns as such, and it's almost every type of business hangs off the road network. It's how, even if you work in an office, it's how you get to that office. It's very important that the roads are kept in good condition. If you go to the shops have all been supplied by vehicles travelling along the roads. The roads transport all the goods from the ports through to wherever the goods are sold or used somewhere else. The road network is extremely important.
Network operations engineer Bill Corlett talking there to Amy Griffiths. Makes a lot of good points, I think. What do you think, though? And beware, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody else, that we are all experts on what the road should be like, I expect, but and there are lots of roads that you see being done, and you think, why are they doing that? For instance, the road from, as Amy said, Quarterbridge to Braddon Bridge. Why are they resurfacing that? I didn't realise that was a problem. I drove down, is it Selburn Drive the other day, the road down to Quarterbridge Road, and that's been resurfaced fairly recently. Why? I didn't realise that was a particularly bad road. There are other roads which are awful. The road up to Douglas Head is absolutely, it's like a tank training track. It's horrendous, but I suppose that if you're going to prioritise things, then there are only a handful of people who use that road every day, whereas there are other roads that might not look as though they need the work doing quite as badly, that are used by 10 or 100 times more traffic. So I expect that it's a difficult job to decide which roads you're going to do. Hey boy, you should see Market Square in Ramsey. Some kind soul is fly-tipped a load of paving slabs and tarmac. What an absolute mess, says Frank. Stu Ramsey Quay, otherwise known as Derby Road, is awful. It's concrete slabs with gaps. The slabs at the junction of East Street actually rock as they're driven over. Right, that's obviously an area that needs doing then. Let's go to the lines. We've got, I think, Rob on. Hello, Rob.
Afternoon, Stu.
Yeah.
I've been away in England for the past 10 days.
Oh, yeah.
And the wife has been driving, because I can't drive.
Yeah.
We've been on motorways, major A roads, minor A roads, B roads, around towns, and most of the time the services are excellent. But
Yeah.
you don't get that in the Isle of Man, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, people complain about the fact that the TT course is maintained to a pretty high standard, but the rest of the island's roads don't seem to be. But my view is that whenever I've driven in England or wherever, I've kind of looked at it, because this comes up all the time, that we've got the worst roads in Europe. And when I've driven in England, particularly around Manchester and Liverpool, it seems to me that an awful lot of the roads there are just as bad as ours.
That's not the impression I got as a passenger.
Right. Okay.
I've had to give up driving, so I do take notice of the.
Yeah. I mean, certainly the motorways are better, but motorways are a lot easier to maintain, I would suggest, than B roads, the sort of roads that we've got.
I think we were on every type of road possible. And,
okay, well, if that was your impression of it, then, I'm not the right person to call you wrong about it. So you think that they ought to do more, or do you just think that they're not using the budget in the right areas?
They're packing on the wrong type of service.
Right.
The roads could do, some of the roads out in the countryside could do is ripping up and redoing properly.
Well, I think that the problem is, I mean, going back to when John Shimmin was Minister of Transport, or whatever you call back in those days, when I first started presenting Mandate, I interviewed him about it, and he said the problem is that an awful lot of the roads that we've got in our countryside are effectively just things that have evolved over the years from cart tracks. So they've not got proper foundations. They've just been tarmacked over, and had gravel thrown at them for years. So, to replace them, you're right, you'd absolutely have to dig them up and build them from scratch. It cost a fortune now.
Yes, I understand that, but there's something should be done, because they seem to get worse and worse, our roads.
Yes. Yeah. All right, Rob, thank you very much for your call. Nice to hear from you. Glad that you're back. Hey, boy, this is from our pal G the Gardener. How anybody, especially somebody of some authority, can say our roads are okay needs their head examining. Our roads are the worst in Britain. Why should we pay road tax for, let's say, rubbish, shall we, G? For rubbish roads? Well, it's the way it is. If we don't pay any road tax at all, then that gives them a great excuse to let them fall apart completely. And I don't think our roads are the worst in the British Isles, to be honest. I mean, if you drive around Ireland and stuff, they've got some rotten roads as well. Remember that all our roads are effectively sort of rural B roads, aren't they? Even what we would class as A roads on the Isle of Man aren't really. And a lot of them, like I said earlier on, are effectively just cart tracks that have grown up over the years, so they've not got proper foundations anyway. It's very easy to criticise the DOI about the state of our roads, but they've got limited resources, we know that. All the money that's raised in road tax, whatever it's actually called, road fund licence or road duty or whatever, all the money that's raised by the tax disc on our cars and motorbikes and whatever goes towards repairing the roads, maintaining the roads, and more as well from central funds. So it's not as though the money's been diverted elsewhere, according to the politicians anyway. I'm not convinced that our roads are the worst in the British Isles, to be honest. Some of them, are appalling. But in general, I don't know. Road maintenance. When will the pavements and pedestrian areas see some maintenance? The pavements are in a very poor state on the Isle of Man, so can a pedestrian, if they trip or fall due to bad pavements, sue the government for lack of maintenance? I expect that you probably could. Yes, if you can prove that it's down to a lack of maintenance on a road that should reasonably be maintained, or a pavement that should reasonably be maintained, I would think you would probably have a case, yeah. Taxpayer will pay for it, of course. £500 for a 37-hour week to look for potholes sums up the DOI. Well, yeah, I suppose somebody has to go around and actually list them. And if that person is, doing a proper survey rather than just having a look and saying, look, a hole in the road, give me the money. I expect there's a bit more involved than that, but you're more than entitled to your say.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. As ever, our thanks to everyone who got involved in the programme. You can do the same by calling, texting or emailing between midday and 2 on weekdays. Or you can join the debate on the Facebook page Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of the Manx Radio website, and manxradio.com is also where you'll find a daily update of what's up for discussion. You can also keep up to date with what's on the programme by liking us on Facebook or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if you'd like to suggest a topic for discussion, get it to us by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.